Hi guys, how you doing today? Having a good day so far? It's not raining out there, it's due tomorrow, but in Manchester spirit, we've got smiles on our faces and warmth and sunshine in our hearts, haven't we?
It's sunnier than in Scotland, to be fair.
Well, that took me down a peg or two, didn't it? Anyway, welcome and good morning. And yes, the session today that we're going to kick things off with is called Stream If You Want to Go Faster. And we've got some brilliant examples of that. So I'm Zenner, in case you didn't know. I present in Manchester on Radio Manchester, Access Manchester, etc., and work for BBC Introducing. So hopefully had quite a good reflection of streaming on my socials throughout the pandemic, and have hosted a few gigs as well, stream gigs. So today I have got a wonderful panel of very knowledgeable people who will be educating me along with everybody else. So we'll kick off by asking them to introduce themselves and tell us a bit about themselves. Starting off with the wonderful Capil, who just performed for you. What a great set, by the way, wasn't it?
Cheers. Appreciate being asked. Just to reiterate what I said earlier, my name's Capil Sesai. I'm a protest singer based in Scotland, or Glasgow specifically. I come from a grassroots musical background, so England would be the place I would tour to the most until the pandemic turned up, and now this is the first time in 2 years that I've been down, so yeah, that's more or less where I'm at, I suppose, so cheers.
Amazing. Tom?
Hello, I'm called Tom Rylance. I can't think about anything apart from how good you are on guitar. It's done my head in that.
Aww.
I need to have some lessons, me. I'm so rubbish. I'm a singer and a songwriter and a lingerie Instagram model in a band called The Lottery Winners that you've probably never heard of. Thanks, everyone.
Somebody's heard of you, Tom. Someone's seen you on TV.
Is that it? I've done my
Yeah,
bit,
that's good, that's
okay.
good.
Sorry.
Moving on.
Hello, so I'm Mary-Claire Daly and I work at Greater Manchester Combined Authority and in the Mayor's office, which means that I am part of the Stream GM United We Stream team. So yeah, we did some stuff through lockdown and we continue to do some stuff.
Some proper great events, especially around New Year and stuff. There was some absolute corkers, wasn't there? And at the end, we have the wonderful...
Hiya, my name is Pauline. I'm head of advertising at Drift, where we promote and produce live stream event. We started at the beginning of the pandemic with Laura Marling, and we did a few shows with Nick Cave, Andrea Bocelli, Kylie Minogue, etc.
If you do want to get your questions in or like social media stuff, there is a hashtag up there, it's UnconQ. We will be asking, allowing you to ask a few questions at the end as well, so get your thinking caps on. If there's anything that stands out to you, we'll make sure we get those questions answered. So it has been a bit of an intense period of technological change. Now, I remember first going into lockdown, logging onto Instagram and just being overwhelmed by the amount of like live performances streaming over Instagram. How have things really changed over the last year and a half? Pauline, I'm sure you've been working with some really like high-profile artists on these kind of things. Has it been a big technological jump to try and really make things look great quality?
Yeah, I think it started really early in the quarantine so Drift was started by ATC management, and we had a lot of album coming and a lot of people were doing live stream online, and so Laura Marling team were thinking, oh, how about we ask a venue if we can go and film something really good and make people pay for it as part of the album campaign. And I remember being, oh, no. Everyone's doing it for free, no one's going to pay for it. And then here we are a year later, and I've left my job at ATC to start to be full-time at Drift. We have a team of 15 people working on live stream. And yeah, it's been amazing to see how creative the show can be and how good they can look. And yeah, it's been amazing. And it's been amazing to work with such amazing artists as well.
Is there much difference in basically the quality of things being filmed ahead of time and then almost streaming as live online? Or do you think there's more power in things actually being live so you can react intimately to people kind of commenting on the stream as things go?
So we've done both. We did a lot of live at the beginning, and we were quite insistent of having it live, but you have to put the artist first, and sometimes the artist doesn't want the pressure of doing it live because it's always, I mean, it is technology and sometimes it doesn't work as we know. But yeah, I think I like it when it's live, because I think that people can tell, and you can see like the performance not being perfect, and it's more like it is a live concert. It's not just like a very long music video. So I think it's just, it depends on what you're expecting from the show, really.
Yeah, I mean, some people have kind of really embraced it, as in the spirit of it being live and being able to interact with their fan base and almost like help capture that essence and get them to invest in them as an artist. I'd certainly say, Tom, you have been smashing it. You've now got a TV show off the back of all your streaming endeavours and collaborations in lockdown. Did you ever think back at the beginning of lockdown that this was an opportunity?
I think we had this moment where it was, it could have gone either way. Like, we'd literally spent 10 years making our debut album, really like built up to March 2020 to be, this is gonna be our moment. And then this funniest thing happened. And I was like, I remember the time, like, when we were doing our album promo at the time, and we were going through, you know, like record stores, and we were doing like in-store gigs and stuff and trying to get those last sales. And it was like, it was falling. The dates were falling off the calendar as we were driving round, and it was really upsetting. I was in TK Maxx at the time, and Boris said that everyone has to go home and shut up and wash their hands. And I just, like, honestly, I had a big breakdown in TK Maxx. And I think I just got it all out of the way in TK Maxx, which is a good place to go and cry. If you know, it's good brands, good value, good for crying. So I just did some crying in there and then got asked to leave. And then it was like the Thursday before the charts on the Friday. And we were like, well, we can't do a gig, what are we gonna do? So that's when we invented live stream gigs. And we did, you're welcome. We did our first one then. And yeah, like thousands of people turned up in my house and watched it, and yeah, so that's where it started for us. And then loads of people like made companies, and I didn't get any thanks or nothing. So
I mean, you've
Thank
always
you.
worked really you've worked really hard to garner a fan base already, though. But I remember us doing a Q&A literally just a week or two before we went into lockdown, talking about the debut album, going through the videos, and then boom. So, like, I wrote an article for the Musicians Union. If they're here, they are here today somewhere. Go and speak to them, support them. They are brilliant people with loads of brilliant advice on the website. And it was about how you could, like, basically try and make opportunities or use this time constructively to push yourself forward. But it must be so hard as an artist to be sitting there thinking, where do I go from here? I've had this rug pulled from underneath my feet where I can't go and perform and connect with my fan base the way that I've already done, you know, previously. So, I mean, where did you go to actually garner your, you know, your next steps? I mean, Kapil, you've made some massive, like, opportunities for yourself through this kind of streaming situation.
I think in terms of me, I'm a bit of an outlier in that the way the world worked before didn't really suit me. And then everyone went online, and then all of a sudden everything suited me really well. Because I think a lot of the politics of what I do, it's quite an international kind of, oh, I really want to, the people go, when are you playing New York? And I'm like, I don't know when that. And it's like, I think when you're based in Scotland, I love Glasgow, I love playing gigs in Scotland, but when there isn't an immediate audience for what you do, that whole geography kind of plays into that. And then even when it comes to showcasing abroad, the first thing people ask who might gatekeep is, hey, how big are you in your home country? Oh, you're not that successful, why would I want to book you then? And my frustration kind of made me go, right, I'm going to go online and find an audience. So pre-pandemic, I was already kind of doing it, and then it suddenly became normalized to go online for everyone. And I kind of went, okay, cool, I'm going to continue doing this. And I think with me, I kind of became a bit more brazen in my approach to, right, we're really going to go for this. I mean, the frustration of like any artist applies, you know, to this situation, but I guess it depends, because my setup's usually like me, my wife on flute and keys, and two drummers facing each other. But I had to scale that down to just that earlier on. So not everyone can do that, so I appreciate that I have the privilege to be able to scale my music down and do it a live stream of just me and guitar, or if I've got the opportunity to do it with a full band. So I don't know, I think it depends on what kind of music you make and whether you have a message that you want people to know about. For me, it's about the message first, the music almost second, which might not be the most popular thing to say, but that's just how I feel. And I feel like having the opportunity to go online and go, hey, who else is really mad about this thing? You know, no one put their hand up in real life, but online thousands of people went, yeah, I'm really mad about this thing, and let's talk about it. And yeah, it kind of grew up from there, I suppose.
So what did you start out with kit-wise and you know, assessment of which platforms you should be sharing the live stream on?
It was loads of trial and error, like the whole, because it frustrates me that on Instagram Live you're kind of at the mercy of your phone camera sometimes. So I'd be doing that kind of set that you just saw with guy and guitar, and sometimes it would be good and sometimes it would be like really tinny sounding. And I was lucky that there's a conference up north called White Days who do like Scottish showcases for artists who want to like break through into the industry, and they let me film like a showcase with my full band in a theatre, and that was the turning point, because all of a sudden that production value kind of gave people something to like check in with, because I think a lot of people were like, are you going to be in your pants in your front room playing the guitar again? I don't care about that. Whereas if you go, oh, you're in a theatre, there's production value, oh my God. But my advice to people who either get that opportunity or shell out to make it happen for themselves is, once you go do that, no one's going to check in the next time you just play guitar in your room. They'll be expecting that or bigger. So it's great if you're able to do it, because you're odd. I think people like, it's like if you go to a show, if you go to a little local show in any 50 capacity venue, there might not be a light show, but you can see the band and there's an energy to that. But sometimes people go to a bigger venue and they expect a certain level of production value, and that applies in the online environment, unfortunately. So yeah, it's a funny one. You were going to say?
No, we will come back and talk a little bit more about the opportunities you've got and how you've managed to set yourself up even better. But that's a really interesting thought that I hadn't really considered, that when you start out with a little simple stream, people's expectations are increasing in your journey, and then, you know, there is a need for bigger platforms. And I know Marie has been working with the awesome United We Stream, which is now called Stream GM. It's very locally based. It's been a massive project for you guys throughout the last...
we're quite tired, all of us. No, it's been amazing. I think, so it all started, like Sasha Lord's nighttime economy advisor, and he's in this like weird international group of like nightmares and night czars and stuff like that. So there's like Berlin and New York, and they were all like, what are we going to do? Everywhere's closed. And so Berlin came up with the idea, and I think they kind of gave it to anybody who wanted it and said, have it. And so we went ahead and we started kind of, okay, well, who are the people who would play in and around Manchester? Who are the DJs who we know? Who are the artists that we want to put on? And it just kind of kept growing and growing and growing. And I think it ended up like massive. We got, I think on New Year's Eve, I can't even remember the numbers now, but it was like 20 million views over the period from a team of like 5 people just doing it in our bedrooms, really. Like, there was a lot of that. There was people on stage. Thank you very much for coming and being on our show.
They were all my
Did
views
you do
then.
too?
19 million views on my stream.
Thanks, love. Yeah, and so now what we're doing is we're trying to work out what that looks like, because it's not sustainable. The only reason that we could do it was because people weren't travelling much, venues were empty, people were prepared to play for free because we were raising money for venues. But now we're in this position where we've got this platform, we've got a global kind of association, there's like 150 countries in the United We Stream family, and we all post each other's stuff, and so this will be being watched all around the world. So we've got this platform, but we now need to work out what we do with it, and so we speak to Berlin every week or so, and they're amazing, and we're going to kind of have a formal global association that does that thing of kind of sharing each other's work and getting the kind of numbers, but that also has that really local, individual presence. So we won't control what South Africa puts out or what Australia puts out, but people in Greater Manchester can watch it. So it's kind of where we're heading, we think.
I mean, it's almost like we've got a lot of the technical stuff bottomed out. Of course, there's always the odd issue with, technology, as there always will be. But it's kind of like we've got that, but now it's almost like working on the model for things. Because, I mean, do we see streaming's never going to go away now. I think it has to factor into the model somewhere, doesn't it? I mean, what issues have we realised that streaming helps overcome? I mean, accessibility. Are there other, you know, geography, that people can stream your gig from the States if they're a big fan, even if they can't get to Manchester? What other issues have you found that have been readily kind of overcome by streaming?
I think that accessibility point is huge. Like throughout all of our shows, we'd have comments from people saying, you know, whether kind of physical health, mental health, disability, that can't get into venues, and they haven't had that kind of level of online provision. And they were like, can you keep this going, please? Because it's great. And so I think it opens up like conversations, it opens up shows, and I think that it also opens it up to new people to do the promoting in a different way as well. So if for whatever reason in your life you might not be able to go to venues around the country from like 7 p.m. until like midnight or something, that puts a lot of people out of the industry. And I think that this really, really opens it up in terms of kind of gender, in terms of diversity. And, you know, I think it's going to be really exciting seeing what the impact is in terms of the type of artist who gets profiled, but also the type of promoters who are able to put stuff on, and the type of people who can then watch it. It opens it up massively.
Do you think artists will be working with streaming platforms directly as well? I mean, obviously we know from Pauline that artists are working directly with organisations, but do you think there'll be more of that in future? To either Pauline or to Marie?
We usually tend to work with artist and manager. We've never worked, except if it's a festival, but we've never worked as part of a venue and putting up a show there. So I think it depends what you want to achieve. If it's, like we've had a few shows that were like part of the album campaign, so it's in a way more normal for it to come from the manager and the artist.
Yeah, I think from our perspective, the way we see it is it's that kind of place thing. So Greater Manchester as opposed to a kind of artist thing. So we're cross-genre, so it's not just music, it's theatre, it's kind of live art, it's poetry, like, so we do all that. We're not kind of owned by one venue or one organisation's artistic vision, but it is from Greater Manchester. We're not a label, so we don't have kind of skin in the game in that way. We can just kind of put stuff on that we really, really like. And so I think that our shows can be quite diverse because we're only really doing it for Greater Manchester. We're not doing it to make money, to sell albums, we can just promote the best of what's in this city region.
It's really interesting that you say that. It's like a concept that doesn't just support musicians, it supports so much more than that. I was hosting a live stream at Manchester Met University a couple of weeks ago, and they had like students do the visuals work with the artists, and the fact that, you know, instead of us having like a shaky iPhone film of someone's gig up on the stream, now we've got something that looks really top quality that you can go back and watch, you know, down the line. Is surely a really good thing to be able to support artists. Like, you know, Kapil, you've said that you know, you've got opportunities to play at so many festivals, and now that quality content must be online. So surely when you're reaching out to booking agents or you know, people, you're getting massive opportunities because you've now got that evidence base there, haven't you?
There's Ari, the point about accessibility and disabilities, I didn't want to cut you off, but I wanted to say something amazing about the fact that you're doing that is, for a bit of context, my parents are both disabled, and I was lucky enough to be part of the making of a short documentary in March of this year where we explored musicians' workshops in Glasgow for disabled musicians and how they've gone online since the pandemic. So they used to be in person and now it's over Zoom. And you sit on these Zoom sessions and all these kids log in who've all got different special needs, and this one person with a guitar is keeping them all in line and getting them all engaged, and it's incredible. And I'm just sitting there going, I can't even get people engaged on a stage in like a venue like this, let alone like over Zoom with all those variables. But one of the disability workshop facilitators we interviewed for the documentary is herself disabled, and she made this point saying, for the whole of history, disabled people have wanted accessibility, and apparently it wasn't possible. But now that able-bodied people like me and everybody else are inconvenienced by it, it's all of a sudden possible. And they were like, what was your excuse before? I don't think there is one. And I think that
I think that we kind of have to to not fall into saying, oh, because it's online, we don't need to work at making venues accessible, because that's still a massive issue. Like, we can't fall back into, oh, it's online, so now we don't have to deal with any of the issues that were there pre-pandemic as well.
Yeah, no, 100%. And RE, the festivals thing, there's an interesting point in that, you know, as any of you who've played, like, as you're probably aware, your band become your family. People you play on stage with, they're like the most important people to you. And my live band are similarly like family to me. And one of the musicians in my live band can't fly, like, he's got a medical condition that means he can't get on a plane. And we did South by Southwest and Canadian Music Week this year, but we got to involve him because it was all streamed from Edinburgh, which is an hour away from where we live. And it's kind of nice, not just because it's online, but that we could include somebody who otherwise would have just been stuck in Scotland while we were off doing these things abroad. So yeah, there's a lot to be considered in terms of that. And I think that the lesson to be learned is that it's so, I don't want to say easy because I'm not in the industry itself of doing it, but it's possible to this amazing extent to make it accessible. Let's have hybrid events in the future. I mean, you know, how many people who want to check into this stream can be here? Not many, but they can all watch it online, and that's massive. You know, my parents are both disabled and they're watching this right now, and that's amazing. You know, not even because they're bothering to check out something I'm doing for a change, but because, like, it's an accessibility thing that they wouldn't, if it was a case of, oh, you have to come physically to Manchester, it's all easy for an able-bodied person like me, but the smallest change of circumstance could render that impossible for me tomorrow. And it's really, I mean, when I think about my city, I don't know how many accessible venues there are in Manchester, but in Glasgow, there's just not enough of them, to be brutally honest with you.
I'd probably say, is there more than one? I know Band on the Wall is accessible because it has a lift.
I think it depends on the levels of accessibility required. Like,
yeah.
It's definitely nowhere near what it should be. And I think that there are issues that the forgetting about the physical accessibility of stuff because everywhere's struggling so much and all these venues are like on their knees. Like, how do they make those changes that they couldn't afford to do pre-pandemic? And I think but this is a chat about streaming. I've gone off, I'm sorry.
No, it's really important to really talk about these things though, because it all does relate and tie back into streaming. But I know that you've got yourself a booking agent and various opportunities off the back of all your work in the pandemic. Do you feel like you've smashed it and you've aced it and you've come out a bit stronger the other side of it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a pretty terrible thing to be like, the pandemic was great for me. Do you know what I mean? Like, you don't want to be that guy, but you inevitably want to be like, oh, there were these frustrations before that I was doing things online, but I feel like I bet on the right horse almost, and I increased the intensity of my efforts almost. And yeah, I was hyper lucky that the right people were checking in, because anyone who's played a showcase event, be it in the UK or abroad, knows that there's a bunch of drunk people, some of them are really important, and how are you going to get their attention? And let's be frank here, there'll be like 5 buzz bands that everybody's going to go see, and all these other bands who are amazing but not immediately visible yet for whatever reason aren't going to be seen by anybody. Streaming opens that right up, and it's almost like, oh, you can check into anything. Like, South by did this interesting thing where to check out a new band, all you needed to do was open a new tab. And it's like, I'll check out 5 minutes of this band. Oh, that was really good. That was, you know, I wasn't expecting that. But you can't physically run from venue to venue at South by or Canadian Music Week or whatever. And yeah, I don't know if I would have had the opportunities that I would have had it been physical stream. I'm not saying that the booking agent that I now have, like, wouldn't have signed me had he seen me in person. It was serendipitous, and it was like, he was checking into the stream, he liked it enough to go, I want to know what this is like in person. And, you know, you can speculate what it would have been like, but, you know, a part of me feels like, was it me making the best of a bad situation? But another part of me was like, I was kind of going hard on the building stuff online first, so I'm glad I started that ahead of the pandemic. Not that I knew any of it was going to happen, but yeah, I think it's a mix of hard work and luck, but you can't not acknowledge the fact that right place, right time is still such a big part of it, you know?
How do you think it's going to change for you when things start opening up again?
I think it's going to be quite positive, because a lot of people in Scotland who were never aware of me are now like, oh, cool, there was this guy, where did he come from? Like, I've been here for 20 odd years just doing this, but, you know, you don't know until you know. I mean, how many artists break, you know, you could think of like a Richard Dawson or a Sleaford Mods, or these artists who took a bit longer to get there, but when they got there, everyone was immediately like in love with what they did. And I love that the youth cult of music is dying away a wee bit. So I think once the pandemic subsides, I'll probably come to a more fully formed fan base than before, which I feel hyper lucky and humbled by. But it was a lot of hard work, as you know, you're probably aware. It's not easier just because you're not going outside. Just because you're in your room, it doesn't make it, Because how do you keep people engaged? How do you keep them coming back? It's a challenge and a half, isn't it?
Well, Tom, I think you should talk us through yours, because, I mean, I've seen a lot of artists also go, right, I'm going to set up a TikTok account. What else can I do with my time? And you've, like, literally smashed it on every platform, including collaborations with Nickelback, Sea Shanties, anybody? You have collaborated with Frank Turner, who was here yesterday. And every time I turn around, there's another collaboration, or, you know, something else, a stream, a TV show that's come from all of your endeavours, streaming online, doing little covers of Liam Gallagher, singing a different song. Honestly, talk us through it, because it's just blown my mind, to be honest, in the last few months.
Thanks. Yeah, well, we just like... we just knew that we had to be incredibly creative, and that's what we love to do anyway. And it wasn't even like, oh, come, let's do loads of stuff because I want to be famous, although that is all I ever want in my life ever, and I'm sure it will happen one day. It was more like, we need to do something to keep us sane. Like, we spend all our time together, we spend all our time on the band, we were ready to go and tour and do our record and everything, and it was like, we just need to stay sane. So we developed loads of mad skills, and like we've never edited videos, or we're not TV producers, and I'm too old for TikTok, but like you just learn it. I don't know, like I think that musicians and creative people, and not everyone in the industry, are just really good at adapting to situations. And I've got a thing I like talking about, which is when back in like I don't know when it would have been, but whenever Beethoven was kicking about gigging, like, and then Stephen Hawking invented recording music, I think. It was like everyone was saying, well, that's it then, you've just killed the music industry, because no one's going to want to go and watch Beethoven play at Band on the Wall now, because they'll just put him on at home on the phonogram or whatever. And like, but obviously that didn't happen. Then the record industry was born, and that was a massive industry. And then, you know, we had vinyl and stuff like that, and then someone else invented a cassette tape, and everyone was like, well, that's just killed it now, because no one's going to go and buy the records. They're just going to record it on the radio. And obviously everybody did still buy records. And then Lars Ulrich, who's the drummer in Metallica, he invented this thing called Napster, and it like really ruined everything for everyone for a while. And then after that, then this man called Daniel Ek, he made Spotify, and then it just always adapted and changed, because like something happened, and then you've got to adapt. And then this is so after Spotify, artists are thinking, well, all my money can now be made live. And then obviously this happened, and then you couldn't do that anymore. So there was always just going to be like, and now we've got these amazing like live streaming things. There was always going to be like a next thing. Like, we're never going to just go, okay, then we'll just stop. Like, so we just found ways to not stop, basically. And just like we wanted to keep people engaged. We were getting amazing, heartfelt messages from people saying, you are really helping us get through this. Because we basically turned our Facebook page into like a TV schedule. And we had like Rob doing a quiz, and we had like, I don't know, like just an audience with, or a live stream, or just anything, just a chat. And it just kept on like this community of people. And also, amazingly, because like no one was doing anything, you could just like text Rick Astley and say, do you fancy coming on my show? And he's like, yes. That's what he sounds like. And we had some amazing guests on there. Like, that's how I met Frank Turner, who we ended up collaborating with, and like Andy Burnham came on. And like, just like weird. Like, I was asking people to do stuff, fully expecting them to say no, but they're all just bored. So they just came and did it. So it was amazing. And the TikTok thing, it's just so easy to go viral on TikTok. I don't know why everyone's not doing it. It's a piece of piss. Like, honestly, we put up 2 videos on TikTok, both go viral. I don't know what everyone's moaning about. It's well easy.
Come on then, what was the 2 viral TikToks? Just because we need to know this before
well,
we can move on.
As part of our TV show, like, Rob sat there, the robust man in the stripes. You should never wear horizontal stripes, mate. I'll tell you about that later. But he's like, he doesn't like doing impressions. But I like him to do impressions, so I just forced him to in public. And so he was doing like impressions on our TV show, and he was just doing like people singing songs in other. So he did like Liam Gallagher singing "My Girl," and it was funny. So we just put it on TikTok, and it got like 3 views, and I went to bed. And when I woke up, it had like 250,000. I was like a bit annoyed that I wasn't the famous one. But then I phoned him up the next day, and I was just like doing some ironing, and I had my cleaning playlist on, which is just full of bangers. You can follow it on Spotify. And one of the things was Nickelback Rockstar, and I was like, sea shanties are going off, mate. There's this postman who's absolutely killing it. We need to get some of that action. And I was like, do a sea shanty rapido. And he was like, well, what do you want me to do? And Nickelback was just on at the time. And I was like, I'm the genius behind it, you see. I was like, that'll probably work. And then I sang it to him. We all just want to be big, but he did it better. And then he put that on TikTok, and then like immediately we kind of got a message off Chad Kruger, which was weird. And I thought he was fuming about it, telling us to take it off, but he was like, let's do this together and let's release it proper on Spotify and that. And then I was on a Zoom with him trying to look at his kitchen behind him and stuff. And yeah, it was just a really strange, I'm still not sure that was real.
What was his kitchen like?
His kitchen's beautiful, much nicer than mine. There was no spaghetti hoops on the skirting boards or anything. It was just totally nice.
I mean, things are changing, things are opening up again, and it's going to be really hard to imagine what the model's going to be. But Marie, have you got any ideas of how things are going to change over the coming months?
Yeah, so I think we've managed to get together as a team for the first time since we started doing this thing last Friday, for just to say, okay, well, what are we going to do now? And I think we kind of settled on 3 strands of stuff. So the first one would be just cross-posting stuff. So, for example, tomorrow, Myth have got Homo Electric, and it's amazing, and they always put on a brilliant show. Now, Berlin love Homo Electric, like places all around the world, like within the global family. They want to see it, so they're producing it, they're streaming it, we're cross-posting it. Somebody in the team presses a button, it's dead easy. So that's one thing, but it gets a bigger audience for stuff that's already happening. And then the second one, which we'll find out how it goes, is the hybrid stuff, like today. So this was going to happen anyway, in person. We bring in kind of production team and we help with the thing. And so as things open up, as shows start selling out, there will be a hybrid thing, and I'm not sure about the kind of monetizing of it on a general basis, but if it increases the audience to a show, that can only really be a good thing. I think people who want to see live will still want to see live. People who can't, for scheduling or for other reasons, can now see that show as well. So there's the kind of hybrid stuff. And then I think that the other strand is more along the kind of the stuff that you do, which is the one-off, really special show. I think if you look at what's happened in kind of arts broadcasting generally, there's no shows where you can see music regularly. For the last 20 years, it's been kind of waning, and I think there's something really exciting about the possibility of just having special shows, less, but really special, thought through, beautiful things. And I think that's exciting because you don't get that. You don't even have Top of the Pops anymore. You don't you've got Sky Arts like BBC. Where are these platforms or things where people can just go and see really gorgeous cultural stuff without leaving the house? So I think there's 3 strands that we're going to go for.
Yeah, I absolutely feel that kind of added value in a really special environment, a very special event. Do you think that there's going to be more of that, Pauline? I mean, obviously you've been working with very specific artists at the moment, but what are your plans moving forward?
I think it is going to be, there's going to be probably a lot of branding, because there's a lot of brands that want to do global shows with artists, and it is really good for artists because the fees are amazing and it gets work for a lot of people. So we're looking into a lot of branding show. We're looking at album release show that would be free or that would come when you pre-order the album. and the band will be playing the whole album in full from like a beautiful venue. And there's also, we've had some conversation with managers saying that artists don't want to tour anymore. So there's like mental health, and like being on tour for like 3 weeks is very tiring. And some of the artists that we were talking to are saying, this is what I want to do. I don't want to be on stage. It's just too stressful. So we're also like trying to like find those artists and make sure that their music is reaching people without them having to be in a bus for 30 days.
It is like really strengthening kind of the support for a release, isn't it? Trying to get people almost signed up, mailing lists and stuff like that, and getting people to invest to get the opportunity to see that show. They would need to pre-order. Getting those pre-orders and pre-saves is so important right now for artists, isn't it? I hadn't even thought about it along those lines of people not wanting to tour. I think obviously there's another elephant in the room for us at the moment, which is Brexit, which makes touring abroad very difficult from what I've seen and experienced and heard so far. Do you think that will impact things further, that people will, you know, be trying to downsize and kind of reduce the touring costs by doing more live streams?
I think a lot of bands won't have the choice, and I think it is going to be, a lot of bands will be like able to tour in the UK, but then maybe not being able to go to Europe or the US. And then if you have a live stream, I mean, because of the shows that we put up, the production is quite important. So you would need to be at a certain point in your career to have the ability to make the money back. But I think for smaller bands, there's a lot of amazing venues doing small shows. The Boiler Room in Guildford have been putting amazing live stream through the pandemic, and they're doing it pretty much in-house, and it looks amazing. And it doesn't need to be, I mean, yes, Nick Cave by himself on the piano at Alexander Palace looked amazing, but it doesn't always need to be like that to just like, yeah, touch people.
No, but it was also interesting what you were saying about brands as well, because me and Marie were talking earlier on about how you get emerging artists on these platforms, because they're the ones that kind of, before they've built their fan base, they need to garner that fan base to get people interested in investing in their music, pre-saving, you know, going to invest in merch, etc. By working with brands, is that the way that we can make this stack up financially?
I think it entirely depends on the artist and whether that's what they want to do and whether the brand fits with what they want to do. You know, I think that there's not one answer and there's not one solution to this. And I think that for certain artists, they'll find a way and they'll find a brand and they'll find someone who will bankroll it. For certain artists, they might be attached to a venue. For certain artists, they might be, you know, it's going to be really, really interesting to see. But I don't think there's just one way that's going to work. It's going to be loads of different types of things. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it seems like we don't have all the answers at the minute, do we? We've learned, you know, you look at it when we were talking about the accessibility thing. You know, we've learned so much in the last, you know, 15, 16 months, and it's really quite overwhelming that it's taken us so long to get to this stage, but it's been quite rapid in the last, you know, year and a half. But where do we go from here? Are we going to change things up again? Are we going to do things a little bit differently? Would you be doing things differently, Kapil?
You mean when things return, would I be doing things differently?
Yeah. Are you still going to be doing the live thing as streaming online and going out and performing live?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of look at live streaming as like a stepping stone to building an audience who would come see you in a physical space. Because there was a point where like some shows were opening up and people weren't really keen to go because they were like, yeah, I have to love this band to risk going to see them during like these circumstances. So for me, especially because a lot of my audience are in India and Canada and North America, for me it's a lot about building like the conceptual live show thing around an album launch. That's something I'm looking into for my next record. And because I only really do concept albums, I don't know why I've decided to do that, but I released one and I'm releasing 2 more in a trilogy. But it's like, because of that, offering my audience a specific package is something I know my audience really likes. So building on that for me means doing a lot more in terms of live streaming. But because my setup can scale up and down and I can add new things and take them away, that diversity is almost something that's like giving me more options to work with. And yeah, and you were talking about collaborations. I don't know, are you aware of the really like crazy collaboration I did a couple of months ago?
No.
I don't know how many people here are aware of him. I hope you're all aware of him, but there's this very eccentric rapper called Lil B, who like fame kind of started about 10 years ago. The word based on the internet was kind of invented by him, and he's collaborated with Kendrick Lamar and Soulja Boy and Thundercat, and really, really, really famous guy. He's very, very eccentric. I'm trying to think, the first time I listened to him, he released this mixtape that just had him rapping over Toxicity by System of a Down, and the song's just him shouting over the song with the other vocals all over it, and that sounds horrific, but it's amazing at the same time. And the funniest thing is everyone's like, this guy is awful, what's going on? But Kendrick Lamar turns up and goes, no, this guy's a genius, and you will pay attention to him. So Lil B, who has 1.2 million followers, randomly tweeted a couple of months ago, or no, like a few months ago now, guys, what's the Indian caste system? I want to know what it is. And a lot of people tagged me going, oh, Kapil, you did an album about this. Tell him. And like, what ended up being me DMing him and talking to him ended up being me and him collaborating on a song. And it was like, I took a song that hasn't come out yet, sent it to him, and in 45 minutes, it's the same thing. You just assume that they're never going to get back to you. But in 45 minutes, you send something over. And it's just, you're amazed, aren't you? And it's just, yeah, I think that going back, what you would do differently is, I'm hoping that everyone, regardless of the kind of music they make, regardless of their message, feels a bit more open to reaching out to collaboration. I'm not saying spam the inbox of every celebrity, you know what I mean? But, you know, I didn't think Lil B would get back to me, but he got back to me in less than an hour. My producer who got me into his music was like, if you were to tell me this would have happened, you know, even that you'd spoken to him, I would have been happy, but the fact that the stems are here, I need to sit down, I need to lie down and think about what's just happened. So I'm sure it was the same for you with like all the celebrities that you've spoken to. But yeah, I think, you know, weigh up your options is probably my advice in terms of going back, because there's more out there than we thought there was, and that's opened it up, I think.
It's really empowering to hear that from you. You know, if you're out there, you're making music, you're loving the idea of working with somebody, but you're a bit nervous about getting in touch with them, it's find an angle, you know, come up with a reason, make it happen. I mean, for people that are kind of thinking about scaling things up, starting out from, you know, performing solo on Instagram Live or something like that, what's the next steps? What have your journey, you've been through some of this already, but what was it just like? Because obviously in lockdown, a lot of people have not been able to get kind of full band together in a room because they've not been allowed to.
So I think the incidence of what happened with me is, for the sake of the first album launch, I was like, oh, because my old setup was just guy with guitar, like you saw. Then it was guy and guitar and a bit of laptop. And then for the sake of the album, I thought, I'll get a drummer. I'll get two, because people would always spite me, and people would always say, oh, you should get a drummer, you should get a drummer. And so to spite them, I got two. And then I got them to face each other, and none of us really fit on the stage. It was like me in between these two drum kits. And it looked really silly, but it sounded great, which is all that matters. And from there, the two drummers then became a fixture, and then my wife joined us on flute and keys and things. So I thought, right, we've done guy with guitar, let's do it as it happened organically. The next stream I did, it was like synced up, it was like a pre-recorded synced up thing. I know everyone's a little bit different. Some people love that, like, you can sit live and you can ask the artist questions on Instagram. Like, I don't really, for me, it's more about having really high production value, even if that's a pre-recorded thing, and maybe having a live interview after that where you talk about what the songs are about or whatever. And for me, it was like guy with guitar and then scaling that up to be like synced up footage of us all in our separate, we had like a screen split up, and it was like my drummer in Edinburgh, the other drummer in Glasgow, and me in the middle. But without all being crammed on a stage, we were crammed on a little screen instead. And yeah, and I think from there, the next step was Wide Days kindly allowed us to do a showcase in Leith Theatre in Edinburgh up in Scotland. And it was like us in an empty room like this, essentially distanced and playing under some really cool like conceptual stage lighting. And that was brilliant. And it's probably the kind of thing you were thinking of, like a high concept show that, you know, has a cinematic element to it that brings people in. Because, you know, you think of your favorite band, you probably don't want to watch a terrible phone video of them unless they're playing a song that they've not released and you're obsessed with them to that extent. But that's not many bands for anyone, is it? So I think for me, it's like, scale it up, but don't feel that you have to. Like, if you're amazing at the guy with guitar, or like the, you know, in Nick Cave's case, guy with piano thing, do that. Like, do what suits you as an artist, is my opinion on it. Because if you try and force it, or you try and be funny when that's not what you are, then it's just, or if you want to be funny, like, try it, and, don't be afraid if it doesn't work, just keep going. I mean, I'm sure we've both had, like, times where we've tried something and gone, oh, this is going to be amazing, and then no one takes it up.
No, everything I do is quite amazing, actually.
Knew he was going to say that. I think, like Pauline said earlier on, it's really about the artists. And I think the thing that I have noticed is, really it's maybe best to do what suits you as an artist. And that could be pre-recording a live session that just looks absolutely stunning, but sitting there online to answer the questions. There's nothing to say you can't have that interaction with people as it goes live, but maybe it's just about tailoring it for you as a personality, as you as an artist. There's so many different things that we don't know, but we are rapidly running out of time. I'm going to give 5 minutes to questions, but before we go, where do you see the future of streaming, Pauline?
Well, yeah, I think there is an audience now, and people are expecting to, like, have a night in and think, oh, is there any gig on tonight that I could watch, because I just can't be bothered to go in town, or because I can't, or because I've decided too late and now it's sold out. So I think there will be, like, people are used to having the option now, so I think there will always be demand. Maybe not right now because people are so excited to go outside, and maybe it is going to be a bit difficult for a few months because people are just, like, learning how to leave again. And, like, I know that, like, in the past few weeks I've been, like, overwhelmed because it's like, I have too many plans. But then in 2 months, I'm not going to have that many plans, and I'm going to be well up for staying in and watching again inside.
Especially in winter, in climates where, in Scotland where it might be snowing, etc. What about you, Marie? You think it's those 3 strands you mentioned earlier on?
Yeah, and I think it's about opening it up. I think the global thing, the going from a kind of really specific place, like, around the world, like, there's so much potential there, and, like, there's so many, like, positives as well. So we've talked about the kind of accessibility, but also, like, it's mental that, like, a DJ would, like, fly around the world for a 1-hour set. Like, in terms of kind of climate change, all of those kind of things.
Massively.
The collaboration that can happen online and live collaboration, and I think it's really, really exciting to see where it goes. That kind of global collaboration, I think, is the thing that most excites me.
Thank you to our wonderful panel tonight. We've got, tonight? It's been a long day already. We've got a few more minutes for questions, so if you have any burning questions, please shout out. I'll have to relay it. Okay. Have we got a mic? Hello.
There we are. I've actually got some questions that have come in already.
Okay.
Abigail had asked a few questions earlier that I think we've covered, which is a bit about how streaming might affect touring in the future. I think it's been something that's come along because touring stopped, but obviously when they run together, will people perhaps tour less as a result? But we might have already covered that, but that's the first one. Secondly, once you, specifically to Pauline and Marie-Claire, about the cost implications of streaming versus live touring, and also, I guess, the environmental thing. I mean, going on tour is hugely expensive and hugely polluting, but equally, a good quality stream has a cost, so that... And then the last one, because we're probably going to run out of time, is could everyone just give a highlight of what you've had in your last year?
Well, let's start off with the environmental and cost element. I think Pauline and Marie-Claire, it's probably your best.
For us, like I said, like, we're kind of not a label, we're not an organisation. Like, we are funded by Greater Manchester Combined Authority in the Mayor's Office. Like, we're public sector, we've got no money. Everything has been done, like, on the cheap. And I think that, what we're at the moment in terms of kind of developing our business model is how do we keep that going? Because our budgets are tiny, but we also, like, when we moved to StreamGM, we're really, really conscious that we had to start paying artists. Like, it probably wasn't okay during the pandemic that people were doing stuff for free, but we were raising money, and we were and they were giving their time to go to supporting venues and to supporting freelancers. So there was the fundraising element that meant that we could kind of ask people to do things for free and to ask people like behind the scenes to do something at less than their kind of standard rate. Like going forward, we've made a kind of pledge that we will always pay kind of artists fairly, that crew will be paid fairly, but we have to find a way, we have to find some money. And that's kind of where we are at the moment. There's loads of good stuff. We have got money from Burnham, but
Woo.
Shout out Andy Burnham.
it's a good egg. He was hanging yesterday. He had a really bad hangover. It was hilarious watching
Thought you
him.
meant he looked horrible.
No, that's...
You should have seen him turned up looking hanging.
No. He was speaking here, and he had a dreadful hangover, and it was very funny to watch him struggle.
Always amusing. Right, we are rapidly running out of time, and I know there are still some more questions. So, quickly, your quick highlight of the pandemic from a streaming perspective.
Pandemic, the best bits.
Sounds like the worst program you've ever seen, isn't it? Starting off with Pauline.
I think it was being on site at Glastonbury and seeing things just like looking a bit more normal and putting your wellies on before leaving the car, and yeah, I think that was a highlight.
I think for me it was probably 24 hours New Year's Eve and falling asleep while I was on shift. So one of our team had to do the stuff because I'd fallen asleep.
It happens. Tom?
I think with me, it's just how close that me and my three best mates in the band have just got through this, and just how, even though for a lot of time we couldn't be together, we just were, and we were on Zooms. It just felt like we were constantly broadcasting each other. I think it's really just made us tight, and we were anyway, but now even more so.
And you, Kapil?
I've had a pretty wacky time, but it's a really personal thing for me. But the music I make it's not often like from a lived experience point of view, but I'm writing songs about people with marginalized struggles, and someone who comes from that community messaged me after a live stream and said, I didn't realize this music existed for me, thank you. And that kind of knocked me off my feet, I think, because that's why you do it, and sometimes you need reminded of it, which is silly, but it's also like the fact that it took a live stream to tell me that was something, so that's probably it for me.
I think we are out of time, but if there is any burning questions that we haven't answered, is there still one? Have we got time for one more? Jeff? Yeah, okay. Okay. Yeah, so it's something I thought actually as well from Instagram Live. How do you, when you've got all those views and streams and viral kind of impacts on TikTok and places like Instagram, how do you turn that into something useful and constructive and financially supportive?
Well, it's interesting. Like, to be honest, I found out today actually that it's actually stung us quite badly. So the Nickelback thing, obviously we released that on Spotify, and it's at the top of our Spotify because obviously it's got Nickelback streams on it, and our monthly listeners are really high. But now when Spotify looks at our algorithm, they see that as, well, they've got really high monthly listeners, but actually the listeners to ratio, the listeners to followers ratio isn't very good, so they're not putting us on the editorials, and it's got nothing to do with my songs not being good enough, I've been told. So actually, in ways that has hindered us a little bit to do something of kind of that magnitude. But, you know, to be like collaborating with massive artists is never going to be a bad thing. I feel like as soon as we did a tune, we were put in front of like Frank Turner's fans, or we've done like Katie Tunstall and Sleeper, and I've just written one with Boy George. Like as soon as that happens, you kind of being elevated up to their kind of, not their level. I'm not as good as Boy George yet, but like we're at least being put out to their audience. So although it might not look great now on Spotify, and Spotify doesn't understand it, then I still wouldn't change it.
I think it creates pools of audiences as well that you can retarget in the album campaign and in the tour campaign. So like the more active you are on socials, the bigger your audiences get, and then the bigger the retargeting options are. So it's always beneficial.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. We are out of time on this panel, but I hope you've enjoyed it. And of course, you can keep sending your questions in if you want to. UnconQ. Thanks so much to the panel. Put your hands together. They've been brilliant.
Thanks.